Ben, now this isn't about free speech. This is about downplaying one of the darkest days in our nation's history. Your take?
That's, of course, true, and she has a long history of not taking terrorism particularly seriously. In 2013, she did an interview in Minnesota in which she joked about people taking al-Qaeda and Hezbollah more seriously than they took America and England.
Ben Shapiro responds by saying this kind of commentary fits into what he calls a long history of Omar not taking terrorism seriously. To back this claim, he references several past actions and statements. For Shapiro, this pattern suggests a worldview that, minimizes the severity of terrorism or redirects blame onto Western nations.
And then in 2016, she wrote a letter in which she tried to have a judge be more lenient with people who tried to join ISIS, saying that, of course, these were people who only became violent because of American marginalization. And then in 2017, she wrote a column for Time magazine in which she suggested that America was rooted and founded on slavery and genocide. And in order for us not to look that in the face, instead, we focused on international terror. This is not someone who takes terrorism particularly seriously, so I am bewildered as to why quoting her would constitute some form of violation of her personage. Would be a violation of free speech or something nonsensical like that.
Ben, just so people know what we're talking about here, I want to play that soundbite that you're referencing where she talks about the way people say al-Qaeda. Let's watch. I think we...
When I was in college, I took a terrorism class. Every time the professor said Al-Qaeda, he sort of his shoulders went up, and
yeah, he's in command here.
Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah. You don't say America with an intensity. You don't say England with an intensity. You don't say the army with an intensity.
Some have interpreted this as Omar mocking Western fear of terrorism. Others argue she was critiquing the emotional conditioning around certain words, pointing out the way language can frame narratives, especially in a post-9/11 world.
Well, and Ben, Pete Buttigieg, we talked about him earlier. He's the new star of the Democrat Party. He's edged out Beto O'Rourke, and now he's taken that spot in the spotlight. He talked today about the consequences of otherizing people like her. I thought you'd love this. Let's watch.
One of the worst things that's happening right now is otherizing people. And if we're wondering whether this has real-world consequences, look no further than what happened not long ago in New Zealand. And yes, by the way, the president demonizing Representative Omar is part of this. It's dangerous and it's got to stop.
Otherizing, Ben.
Well, very odd, since Representative Omar has 3 times in the last 3 months been chided for openly anti-Semitic statements, and then the Democratic Party has defended her. I'm amused to watch as the Democratic Party suggests that criticism and quoting of Ilhan Omar amounts to violent incitement, where Representative Omar can say whatever Jew-hating thing she wants on a daily basis, and that is not incitement. Now, I agree, it's not incitement in either case, but to pretend that it is incitement when it's stuff you don't like, and it's not incitement when it's stuff that you do, seems pretty irresponsible at the mildest.
Ben, thank you so much. Great to have you on.
Omar's statements, whether in interviews, letters, or columns, often aim to challenge dominant narratives about terrorism, race, and history. But these same statements are also deeply controversial, especially for those who see them as dismissive of threats or disrespectful to national trauma. Shapiro is pointing to what he sees as hypocrisy in how political figures and media outlets respond to controversial speech. In his view, some figures are shielded from criticism, while others are disproportionately targeted, depending on their ideology. At its core, this debate is less about a single soundbite and more about who gets to speak, who gets to criticize, and how we decide what's acceptable in public discourse. Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment below with your thoughts.